Alright, everybody. So today I wanted to cover a basic yet thorough understanding of how verbs in the Cherokee language work. Not only that, but I'm kind of aiming to give you a more broader idea of how verbs tend to work in indigenous North American languages. I had a slide on this, but unfortunately it must have got corrupted in a save accident. But I went on to say that, I have not personally looked into it. I'm sure it exists in linguistics, but there's this concept I've thought of that really interests me, which is basically the concept of communicative density. Or I guess what I'm interested on that spectrum would be the idea of how densely one can communicate something in the smallest word unit possible. So I think we're going to expand further on that idea here in this slide. Saying I isn't just saying walks or walking like you would say he walks or he is walking, but rather you're literally saying he, she, or it is walking. That pronoun translating into English is really just contextual. So if you're talking about a guy, probably just say he. If you're, woman, she, anything else, it. You could also you could translate that into the singular they. Um, Saying agiha isn't just saying have, but rather I have. But if you don't have anything you're talking about in particular, and typically this is usually just done in Cherokee after the object of what you're talking about has been mutually understood by both parties. You're basically implying that the word it is basically implied. So you're saying I have it, basically. Um, so it's good to understand early on if you're interested in Cherokee, or I would also say Native American linguistics as a whole. And when you're speaking verbs, you're speaking an entire phrase in one word, um, through the use of multiple prefixes and suffixes on a verb root, rather than just one word, one action word. So here I have a flow chart breaking down basically your main core parts of a verbal phrase that you might encounter. Now I want to put a disclaimer here that some of these prefixes and suffixes will return when we talk about other parts of speech. Again, Cherokee word order and Cherokee word position is pretty fluid and free. It typically follows a subject-object-verb structure by default, but depending on emphasis, everything seems very free in comparison to English. So again, Cherokee verbs work on a system of interchangeable prefixes and suffixes that attach to a verb root. You can break down Cherokee verbs structures, or a Cherokee verbs structure, in 5 main segments. That would be the pre-pronominal prefixes, which is just a way of saying what comes before the pronoun prefix, but there's a lot of them. you have certain, like, negation, or one that would translate to that. You have a ton of different direction ones, which are expressing actions in which the direction is happening in correlation to the speaker, or whoever the pronoun prefix is, right? So we have, direction towards, lateral position to, um, then you have direction away from. Anyhow, you can have a bunch of these prefixes stacked up on top of each other, but as you'll see later in this video, they follow a pretty strict, concise order. But again, even all of those prefixes have their own defined system of rules, and it gets a little sticky. It's unlike any language you've learned or speak, more than likely. So next we have the pronominal prefixes, which would be pronoun prefixes. All Cherokee verbs require the conjugation of a verb phrase with a pronominal prefix. That is a must. Even the infinitive, in a sense, has its own pronoun prefix. Then you have the tense suffix, past, present, future, even though we have more time tenses in Cherokee, like reported past, which you are just basically saying, like, I heard that this happened, and you're basically conveying the idea or the understanding that you weren't there directly to witness an action taking place in about the length of a syllable. Do you understand what I'm saying when I say, like, information density? Then we have, like, iterative or a bunch of other auxiliary suffixes. There's, like, a yes, no, question forming suffix, a question that, or a suffix that would mean or, something that would tell if the action is happening in a repetitive manner, so on and so forth. And that's basically your 5 main building blocks of a Cherokee verb. Pronominal prefixes are basically pronoun syllables bound to the verb root. They are also referred to as bound pronouns. However, again, there are differences between Cherokee pronouns in English, or even Proto-Indo-European family pronouns. We have only 2 first-person pronouns in English. There are about 5 in Cherokee, and with 4 subdivisions among 2 verb classes, that leaves us with about 20 different base pronoun forms, just for first-person choices alone. Of course, there are many more of those, but we will be mainly looking at these forms, and then some just general pronoun forms, I think. So we have the depth of the first person. So in English we have 2 first-person pronoun concepts. I, myself, and we, which conveys the concept of I, myself, within a group of people. In Cherokee, we have 5 first-person pronoun prefixes. I'd like to introduce the concepts that they are conveying before we get into the prefixes themselves. So number 1 is I, as in a one-to-one translation of the word I. Number 2 is you and I. So a pronoun conveying the concept of you and I. Then there's the two of us, but not in a you and I sense, but a he or she and I, but not you kind of sense. We all, including you, then we all excluding you. And you is the person being spoken to. Again, you heard me say verb class earlier. We have two verb classes in Cherokee. One is Class A and the other is Class B. You can think of Class A verbs as being action or active terms. You can think of Class B verbs being static, passive, or even abstract terms. Both classes, again, are further subdivided on the basis of whether or not they begin with a consonant or a vowel. But I do want you to note that this is not the only way that verbs get classified. Not the only way that verbs get classified. Alright. So, Class A verbs. These, again, are action or active words. So, on the left-hand side here, we have Class A starting with a vowel. And to the right of the English pronoun, you'll find the Cherokee equivalent. So, I is just G, the G consonant. You and I is in, he, she, and I, but not you is osht. We all, including you, is ed. We all, excluding you, is och. So we can see a pattern here forming already. If it's an inclusive form, we have e, exclusive o. So we have these dashes here and weird chunks of Cherokee syllables with English letters is because I'm illustrating vowel and prefix synthesis. This class introduces what is a pervasive feature in Cherokee, the morphing of consonant syllables with the initial vowel of a verb. Example, the root here is, well, it actually is egg, not gag. That's a mess up on my part. But as you see in the bottom here, the red G represents I, as in the pronoun. Then we have ega, and we see how that combines with the A and ega to produce gega. I'm going. I will show this and display this concept a little bit more in the future here. But moving on, just to get the base information to you. Consonants, very much more straightforward. It makes more perfect absolute sense in Cherokee phonology. If the verb starts with a consonant, just put a complete consonant to the left of it. So here I is G, you and I is ini, he, she, and I, but not you, is oshti, we all plus you is ogini, we all minus you is ochi. And again, you see that pattern of inclusivity with E. Well, never mind. Damn. Better luck next time. I thought I was on to something. So, here is Class B. Again, class B would be passive or static words. So our prefixes before our vowels would be ag, gin, uh, he, she, and I, but not you would be ogin. We all plus you would be ig. We all minus you would be og. And then consonant wise, we have agi for I, gini for you and I, ogini for he, she, and I, but not you, igi for we all plus you, and ogi for we all minus you. So you can see in the left hand cell adulia, or you could just say aduli, which basically means want. And since we don't have an object again, you're saying want in parentheses it. So if I combine that with agua, I get agua duli, which is I want it. Or gina duli, you and I want it. Or ogina duli ha, he, she, and I, but not you want it. Iga duli ha, we all want it, excluding you. Or including you, rather. My bad, my bad. Oga duli ha, we all want it, excluding you. And then here on the right hand side, I have giha, I have it. Giniha, you and I have it. Oginiha, she and I have it, or he and I have it, but not you. Igiha, we all have it, including you. Ogiha, we all have it, excluding you, rather. So, part 5 here, introduction to pre-pronominal prefixes. In Cherokee, any prefix which appears before the pronominal prefix is classified as a pre-pronominal prefix. These prefixes address a variety of things pertaining to position, negation, pluralization, etc. We will return to this flowchart in the future. It shows the order of the pre-pronominal prefixes in a flowchart order. Just follow the red letters. It's basically left to right per row. So we have a negative and relative past in the first cell. The second cell is W, which is basically like actions happening away from the speaker, which we'll actually learn about in this episode. 3 would be like a lateral position, saying already. Then 4 would be day, plural object, so this is how you pluralize things. And again, we'll get into these at another time. But this is the basic prefix order. So this is the Y negative prefix. As you see below, Y before vowel, E before consonant, and U before W. Forming negative with tla. Tla is used with the Y negation prefix specifies an action which is presently not occurring. So we have a couple examples here, actually a few. Tla. Tlayigadog. No, he, she, it isn't standing. Tla. Tlayagiha. No, I don't have it. And tla. Tlayuweka. No, he, she, it doesn't have it. Anyways, if Y occurs before H, the antithesis occurs. So Y plus he would be he. The use of the suffix does trigger pitch changes in the word, even in some attached prefixes. yet this is not fully understood at present. Forming negative without tla. Whereas the use of tla triggers the use of negative verb form, using y negative without tla suggests uncertainty on the part of the speaker on whether or not the action is actually happening. So, gawoni means he's speaking, but ye gawoni is if he's speaking. But again, in Cherokee, however, for this to be grammatically correct, it would have to be a clause in a larger sentence. So it can't be a standalone phrase. It doesn't really make grammatical sense in Cherokee. You would just say yigawoni, yigawoni, tla, yagwanta, yigawoni, tla yagwanta, which is basically if he's speaking, I don't know. So, in a more properly translated English, would probably be something like if he's speaking, then I don't know, type of deal. And then we have our action away from speaker prefix. So, form is W before vowels and we before consonants. The function of this prefix is to inform the listener that the action is occurring away from the speaker. So if I have the verb ai, which is he, she, or it is walking, and then put my action away from prefix, so we have W plus ai, that would equal wai, wai. He, she, it is walking away. You can plug a subject into there real quick. Naege, yeah, wai. The woman is walking away. Another example is gadog. He, she, it is standing. Here the verb phrase begins with a consonant, so we're going to have to use we. So that would make we plus gadog, we gadog, we gadog, and that is he, she, it is standing away. However, standing away as a concept sounds a bit wonky in English, so it would probably better translate as he, she, it is standing with their back turned to me. So here's a brief primer on tense. In Cherokee, tense, time in which an action is taking place. Just want to make sure. Yeah, okay. Time in which an action is taking place is conjugated with a suffix. This is attached to the end of a verb phrase. All examples shown are in the present tense. There are rules which govern over the a suffix. If it is a motion verb, the a suffix is omitted for e, as we saw in the example ai, which is third singular, is walking. Here we have another example, ahili, another meaning third singular is driving. Otherwise, it is generally marked as the ha suffix we saw in previous examples. If not that, it is usually an antithesis between a consonant and that and ha. However, as you saw in the previous slides, we can usually, in most cases, completely omit ha at the end of verbs. It's kind of implied already. And then the final suffix or final syllable that you pronounce would get the tone that ha received. There are many grammar rules that we could cover, but we aren't there yet. This is just a basic primer to get you to understand the parts of a Cherokee verb.